What does it truly mean to be redeemed? Whenever I think about redemption, I absolutely love thinking about the movie Les Miserables with Liam Neeson in the 90s, maybe 94 or 95, Liam Neeson as Jean Valjean, which is such a wonderful story of redemption. It is just so beautiful. Starting with the priest, Jean Valjean, played by Liam Neeson, was a criminal who was sent to prison for 19 years because he was hungry and stole a loaf of bread. Well, he was hungry, but he still broke the law and was sent to 19 years of forced hard labor. And when he came out, well, he was still labeled a criminal, which meant that he had to report to a parole officer, and he probably was going to have to beg for food because nobody's going to hire someone with a criminal record, especially in those days. You have to present yourself as a criminal wherever you go, as a convict. And if you fail to report to the parole officer anytime for the rest of your life, you're going back inside. There was no redemption. You were always that criminal. And then one day, he knocks at the door of a priest, asking if he can stay there for the night. And the priest brings him in, gives him a bowl of soup, gives him a bed and some clean clothes and a shower. In the middle of the night, Jean Valjean wakes up, and guess what? He's already robbing the priest, stealing his silver, all of that silverware. The priest wakes up, doesn't realize what's going on. Jean Valjean hit him over the head and flees with all of that silverware. The next morning, of course, the wife is whining about it. Some police people come to the priest and say, "Hey, we caught this person here. He has all of your silverware. He said that you gave it to him." And the priest does something amazing. He really manifests the character of our Father, of Yeshua. He says, "I am very angry with you, Jean Valjean. You forgot to take the candle posts." And the police officer is like, "Wait, you're telling us that he was telling the truth? You gave it to him?" "Oh, yes, I gave it to him, and there's more. But you forgot to take it. Why did you forget to take the candle posts, Jean Valjean?" And he sends his wife to bring them, and he tells him away from those officers. Jean Valjean is shocked. He's like, "Why are you doing this for me? I hit you over the head. I robbed you. You treated me kindly, and I treated you poorly. Why are you doing this to me?" And the priest says something so beautiful. He said, "By this I have now redeemed you from the devil and handed you back over to God. You no longer have to be a slave to this way of living. You have enough wealth, you can start an honorable life. You don't have to beg, you don't have to be a criminal. You can sustain yourself, you can start fresh." And that's the whole point of redemption. It means that you no longer have to be who you are. You no longer are a slave who's bound to do this because he has no choice. Well, if you're a convict and you cannot get a job because you're a convict, well, you're going to stay a convict because you have to steal in order to eat. It's a system that beats itself down. How can you ever escape and become honorable again? There's no redemption in that former system of things. Once you're a slave to sin, you're always a slave to sin, because how can you stop? You're a slave to it. Whoever sins is a slave to sin. Once you've done it, you're going to do it again. How can you stop and become honorable again? But that's the point of redemption. And this priest redeemed Jean Valjean by laying down something of his, giving of himself to someone who struck him, someone who stole from him, yet his grace was abundant, and he gave more than what Jean deserved. And that is exactly what Yeshua did. After all, did we not sin against him? Did we not pierce him, put the nails through his hands and feet? He died for our sins. We struck him. We've done evil, and yet he decided in his great mercy to take it upon himself, to lay down himself and give us life out of himself. Something that would cost him. He shed his blood for us to redeem us, so that now we no longer have to be a slave to sin. We can live as freed men, truly be free. We are redeemed, because the wages of sin is death. You have to die. You're already on the death row. Well, somebody has to die. Yeshua said, I take it upon myself so that you can live. And now you're free. There are no death charges against you. You don't have to introduce yourself as a convict. You can be a decent man and live a decent life. You can get a job and sustain yourself honorably, respectfully. That's the whole point. Now in the movie, Jean Valjean goes on to become a very successful businessman and a mayor. All the people in the town want him to be mayor. He didn't want it, but well, he becomes the mayor, and eventually some police officer recognizes him. And he flees, and then he just wants to live a decent life. He's not a criminal anymore, but under that law, well, a convict is always a convict. And he failed to report to the parole officer, and he failed to introduce himself as a convict. Therefore, he must go back to jail, despite the fact that he's a redeemed person. He's a restored and converted person. He now believes in God. He's a godly man. He does everything right. He cares for the poor. He sacrifices of himself for the orphan and the needy. He started a soup kitchen everywhere he goes. Nobody has anything but good to say about him. But the police officer is so zealous for the law. He's not a bad guy. He's just zealous for the law. And according to the law, well, there is no redemption. Once a convict, always a convict. And at the end of that movie, and this is a spoiler for you, he decides after a long journey, he sees that Jean Valjean is a redeemed person, that he is changed, that he is not this evil man that he was so accustomed to knowing from back in the day. And he knows that he cannot just set him free because, well, how could he? That would be a violation of the law, and he spent his whole life trying to be perfect to the law. And so he sacrifices himself to truly now atone for Jean Valjean and redeem him. Because that's the whole point of true redemption and salvation and atonement. It is twofold. Something has to die. Ezekiel 18 says, if a wicked man turns righteous, his wickedness will be remembered no more. And that is true. You turn your life around, but what are you going to do with this outstanding debt? Is it just going to be waived off? That's not what the Lord said in his law, in his Torah, in his instruction. The wages of sin is death. Just because you stop committing more doesn't cancel what you've done. And that is where Yeshua, again, is our Redeemer. Because he takes it upon himself to pay the wages of our sin, to receive it, the punishment for our iniquities, Isaiah 53. He was pierced for our iniquities. He was bruised for our transgressions. The affliction that brought us peace was upon him, and through his bruises we are healed. He truly is our kinsman redeemer. Somebody had to die, and so that you could live, he gave up his life. So what does that mean? Now that you are redeemed, what are you going to do? Are you going to go back into sin? To continue living this way of godlessness, this way of the flesh? Lusting and greeding and lying and deceiving and hoarding and being selfish pursuing money and wealth and adventures and adrenaline and all the things of this world, if you do that, then you've just undone your redemption. What's the point of redeeming you if you just go right back into what you've done before? The whole point was to redeem you so that you could return to God, so that you can be righteous and live forever, so that you do not have to die in sin. Man was not created to die. We were created eternal beings to know our eternal God, who is from everlasting to everlasting. We are not supposed to die. The reason we die is because of sin. We choose the ways of the flesh, which are not eternal. They are temporary. Yeshua redeemed us so that we can live according to the ways of God, according to His Spirit. But if a man starts and then goes back, there is no hope for him, because he has spurned the redemption, and there is no redemption left for him. How could there be? You were freed, and now you chose to go back into slavery. You chose it. It doesn't make any sense. Why? Jean Valjean, once he had this once-in-a-lifetime, blessing, he took advantage of it, and he never went back to that person that he was. He became an upright, straight man, fear of God, follower of the Mashiach, servant of the Lord. Are you? How could you not value what was done for you when you realize the high price that He paid to redeem you? It wasn't cheap. That priest gave him all of their silverware and those candle posts. It was expensive, monetary expensive. They weren't wealthy people, but it was everything they had. He told his wife, we'll use the wooden spoon. Stop crying about it. Because he saw the greater value, the redemption of this man. And he never met him before in his life. First time he met him. And the man robbed him, and he gave him more. That is the character of our Father. He gives us more. We're still alive, aren't we? Not because we deserve it, but because that is who He is, abundant in grace and mercy and truth. So now that you have this understanding of redemption, I do hope and pray that you appreciate and act accordingly to work out your salvation, to live out your redemption, to actually obey God, return to Him, submit to Him, love Him, follow Him, do everything He tells you to do, so that you could live forever, so that you do not die in your sin, so that you do not go back to where He brought you out of. May the Lord help you and have mercy on all of you.